Happy Friday to everyone. We are going to kick off our webinar today on how to gain 5 layers of visibility into your virtual infrastructure. By ways of introduction, you have myself, Stacy Leidwinger, and I run the marketing department here at Goliath. I'm also joined with Yemi Ladyju. He's our senior technical consultant. Now, before we get started, I did want to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, in terms of flow today, I am going to give just a brief overview about Goliath and some of the challenges we solve. Then I'll turn it over to Yemi, who's going to talk about the need for 5 layers of visibility, and then dive into the technology to show how you can use that visibility in order to anticipate, troubleshoot, and document end user experience performance issues. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A box. And one question we always get is, will this recording be available later on? Yes, within 24 hours, you will have a recording of this webinar. So let's get started. For those who are not familiar with Goliath, we offer end user experience software, which allows us to troubleshoot and monitor those end user experiences. And we do that broadly across all industries. As you can see from our slide here on logos, we can scale to some of the most largest and complex IT infrastructure, many centered around Citrix, VMware Horizon. We also have an ease of use profile and price point that allows us to scale down to medium-sized organizations. One of the benefits that we hear from every single client that you see on this screen is that when they acquire Goliath, it replaces 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts. And when I say replace, it really augments, because as I'm going to go into detail, often one of the biggest challenges in IT infrastructure teams is you simply do not have enough people. Because of the embedded intelligence and automation that we offer, which will dynamically discover your entire infrastructure, identify what to monitor, how to monitor, and alert anytime these thresholds are exceeded, that is how we can go ahead and operationally add that amount of effort into the organization. The final key takeaway, and we have some health systems on the line today, is we have a stronghold in healthcare. We are known as the standard in health IT because we have purpose-built modules that allow us to not only monitor and troubleshoot the end user experience through the infrastructure, but also factor in all the major EHR applications: Cerner, Epic, Allscripts, Meditech. So we have business and technical relationships with each of those EHR providers that allows us to offer monitoring across the user experience, factoring in end user behavior, the IT infrastructure, as well as the EHR system itself. So with that intro, let's talk about some of the challenges. So I'm sure many of you today on the phone are joined in because you're looking to gain extra visibility and data around the infrastructure that supports end user experience, especially as so many users today are now working remotely. And so what we hear from many of our clients is they're looking for the ability to gain visibility and understand when there is an issue with the end user experience. Is it because of a home Wi-Fi connection? Is it because of user behavior? Is it because of something in the underlying infrastructure, whether it be at the hypervisor host layer, or is it with the OS? Is it with the VM? There's many areas that can cause problems. And when you don't have data, when you don't have visibility, you have a lot of finger pointing across IT teams, across vendors. You're struggling to really identify and isolate root cause. And maybe most important is you literally cannot anticipate issues. So you're at the mercy of your end users to report problems, which means that you're very reactive in how you're able to respond to them. And the reason that many of you probably find yourself in this situation is not because you haven't put up the right infrastructure, but instead to deliver a really good end user experience, especially when you're leveraging virtual applications, virtual desktops like Citrix or Horizon, it requires over 15 different technologies to come together and deliver that experience. So think about your environment. You have each of your users. Each of them are unique. They work in different ways. They're working now from different locations. Many are at home, and you have zero visibility into their network and connectivity. They're all, if you're in Citrix, kicking off their unique ICA sessions. They all have different unique endpoints, some that you can control, some that you can't. They're even their home devices now. They're all connecting in different ways, from public Wi-Fi, hotspots. their home office. And then you have your infrastructure layer. And there you might have your Citrix components like NetScaler, Storefront, broker services, your applications. You've got your backend systems from licensing server to profile servers, Active Directory. Below that, you have your hypervisor host layers. To add even greater complexity, some or all of these components might be sitting in a cloud like Azure or AWS. So when your end users are challenged with slow performance, slow logons, it really becomes hard to isolate root cause if you don't have visibility across this environment. And then on top of this, and I hinted at it already, is there's simply not enough of you in the organization. And the demand of your time has only risen. This is just an example around Citrix, right? Citrix touts they have about 400,000 customers, and we came up with this name with Citrix. If you think about it, on average, based on the size of your organization, you probably want to have 2 to 3 experts that are full-time looking at that environment, supporting it. That means there's the demand for about 1.2 million experts. If you look on the supply side and do the math, there's probably less than 50,000 experts out there. And so instead of being able to really isolate and identify and work with the end user experience, you're often just putting out fires and you're trying to grasp any type of data you might be able to find in order to solve that. And as I just said, it's not easy when you don't have a single location to go to. And so this is really where tools like Goliath come into play. In order to really support that end user experience, you need purpose-built software with embedded intelligence and automation that's going to discover your entire infrastructure, all of those components I mentioned, identify what to monitor, how to monitor, and alert when thresholds are exceeded. And even, and Yemi's going to show this, automatically remediate some of those cases when you can based on scripts or actions that you can take in the software. And in order to do that properly, you want to be able to anticipate issues so you can be alerted on them before end users are even impacted. You need tools that allow you to troubleshoot in real time and historical sessions so that you can identify exact root cause and move on. And then you want to be able to document. You want to provide empirical evidence when issues have been resolved. And you also want to be able to show trends over time. How is the user experience trending? How is CPU usage trending within some of your back-end architecture? When you put these type of solutions in, you truly can transform from reactive to proactive. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Yemi, who's really going to focus on the virtual infrastructure and provide some best practices on what do you really need to monitor in order to deliver the benefits I just discussed. Yemi?
Thanks, Stacy. So when you talk about sort of infrastructure monitoring and the sort of the traditional infrastructure monitoring, especially for on-premises solutions, a lot of times it's all based on the hypervisor platform, right? Hypervisor monitoring, whether that's any of the major sort of hypervisor platforms that are out there. And essentially you get really good metrics from the hypervisor host, right? Resource utilization, CPU, you get a good amount of metrics on the VMs that are being supported by those hosts as well. And, of course, depending on the solution, you get historical data, information into storage. This is all very, very important information. However, these are just sort of 2 layers of the entire infrastructure. There are other things that are going to impact user experience that you're not going to get from the hypervisor host. So there's other things like the OS, right? OS level metrics like the event logs and some of those performance counters that are sort of critical in determining what the root cause of issues are and determining what actually what these sort of resources, underlying resources, or how much those underlying resources are impacting users. And of course, you have the application layer, you have the hardware layer. These are all the things that if you take away, you sort of get a broken picture as to what's happening in the environment. So to take it a little bit further and to give you an example here, you could have your underlying virtualization layer and you're monitoring from a hypervisor perspective, and your monitoring tools all show you green, right? You have from a VM level, your Exchange server is up, CPU utilization is great. Same thing for SQL, your domain controllers, file servers, so on and so forth. However, if you're not taking those additional steps and getting that additional visibility into the performance of your infrastructure, you could be missing specifics taking place on the OS level and the application level for the Exchange server, right? Or things with SQL. So without having that additional visibility, you can see everything is green. Well, you actually would be having some problems inside of your environment, and that's why having 5 layers of visibility is really essential in anticipating issues before they happen, troubleshooting them when they do, and again, of course, being able to document historically what has happened in the environment so that permanent fix actions could be put in place. So Stacy, before we go into a demonstration, do you mind just talking a little bit through a client success story and how they're able to leverage some of this information in their own environment?
Yes, Yemi, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about actually a technology company that had come to us. And why they came to us is that they were having many of their users complaining about slow performance. They had no way to really understand what that performance was. And really, they were starting to get a bad reputation. And they said, how can we anticipate these issues? Because we can't necessarily rely on just our end users. Their data is not always 100% accurate. When we ask about when the slowness occurred, they're not sure. Often, in worst case scenarios, we don't even hear about all the issues. We often hear about it secondhand. The other thing they said is they had a really complex environment. So there had been some acquisitions in this organization. So they had really a mixed environment that had both virtual and physical servers. They were running on numerous OSs in terms of Unix, Microsoft Linux. They were starting to migrate some of their technology into the cloud. And so they really were looking for a solution that could provide them a single pane of glass that would monitor their entire infrastructure, proactively alert them anytime that resource utilization, CPU usage was low and could negatively impact that end user experience. And then they also had a small team. Even though they were a tech company, they didn't have a huge team supporting their infrastructure. And so they said, can you automatically remediate some of the most common issues? Maybe memory's maxed out and you need to clear disk space. Maybe you need to restart a service. And so that's exactly what Goliath was able to do across their environment. A heavy focus was using VMware vSphere. Yemi, do you want to kind of go into the technology and show how they leveraged it to overcome many of those challenges I just mentioned?
Absolutely. And before we go in, there are a lot of different areas within the technology. It's a very robust technology. It's going to give you visibility into all of your IT elements and, the different virtualization solutions that you have. And I wanted to start off talking about, a screen that really leverages our embedded intelligence and automation, along with our visibility into the different portions of the infrastructure. So where I'm starting off here is our automatic discovery and dependency map view. Now, this is a very Citrix focused view, but a lot of those elements here are going to sort of propagate, throughout the different views that you're going to be seeing in the technology. So this will automatically map out the delivery infrastructure. It's then going to leverage embedded intelligence to deploy monitoring rules. So it's going to be looking for conditions, failure points, thresholds, and events that can actually cause end user experience issues if they're not taken care of. These sort of monitoring rules then drive a sort of heat map display that's present here on the screen. So as issues take place on different components, they start to turn red or orange depending on the severity. And then you can click on the components here, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you can take a look at the resource utilization, health checks based on the role of the component in the environment, and even giving you any alerts that have triggered on this particular machine. What's important here is we're able to understand your environment, deploy technology or deploy rules that are going to be looking for those conditions that cause problems, leveraging the data that we're collecting from all of those layers as we talked about earlier. So if I wanted to get, of course, some deeper metrics on any one of these components, I can click on this link here at the top of the screen, and now I'm able to get detailed metrics from all of the different layers: the OS layer, the hardware layer, of course, the hypervisor host, So we're getting CPU utilization as well as CPU ready, detailed memory utilization for the time frame for in real-time format here, but we can go back historically, disk performance as well, right? You can see what data stores this particular VM is leveraging in order to perform. You can see disk usage, network performance, taking in information from the hypervisor layer as well. So anything that could take place that could impact this particular machine, you're able to see here in a single view. So you can quickly, again, start to troubleshoot, and then you have all of this data historically for you to then use to document that and prevent issues from taking place in the future. What we can also do, since this is a very sort of Citrix focused view, we can head over to our dashboard display. And this is going to pull in every single component that we are monitoring within the technology. And again, as you notice, this has a heat map structure to it as well. So you can see all of your virtual hosts here at the top of the screen, your virtual machines. You can see the machines that have active alerts on them. And then from here, you can actually just click down on a particular VM, and now you can see what alerts are triggering, what's actually causing this machine to show up in a red status. Now, these alerts are also sent out via email. They're sent out, they can be integrated into different ticketing solutions like ServiceNow. So it's a part of your IT, it's gonna be a part of your environment, but you can then leverage this information to drive tickets being opened, or to drive certain teams to be put together to actually solve these issues as they happen. So a number of these screens are being driven by the monitoring rules that we apply to your environment because of the visibility we get. So when we talk about those monitoring rules, I wanted to just quickly go through some of the things that we deploy into your environment. So we're looking at our monitoring rules section now. And this is going to show you, again, all of the out-of-the-box rules that we're looking for. So whether that's within the Windows services, whether that's within the particular server, whether that's from Hypervisor Host, the performance counters, processes that are running, all from the OS level. So we're looking for these sort of conditions based on best practices that could impact user experience or could impact overall performance in the environment. And each of these monitoring rules can be configured to set out alerts, as we talked about before. But another thing that's extremely important is that every single monitoring rule can actually trigger remediation actions. So you could essentially have the technology, for instance, look for a particular process, and restart the process if there's an error, or terminate a process if you don't want that particular process to be running in your environment. These are all things that can be done, configured right out of the box without any sort of additional scripting or anything like that. However, if you also wanted a report, an alert to trigger a more complex remediation action, whether that is, for instance, if we take a printer spooler service failure, for instance, you want to be able to, it's the standard remediation action in that case would be to kill the service, maybe clear the printer cache, email users that had print jobs that they need to resend their print jobs, and then restart the service. All of that can be triggered based on an alert in the technology. And if you head over to the remediation section, you can actually have those steps embedded into, let's say, a PowerShell script or a batch file that could do all of those steps for you within the technology, or from the alert being triggered without you having to take any manual steps. So you can automate and essentially extend the reach of the technology to be able to solve these issues as they happen without sort of involving any of your IT staff. So it's going back to what Stacy mentioned, this sort of augments your IT staff, because all of those sort of actions that would have to be taken manually, you can do them automatically from the technology. Other things that we can talk about really quickly would be taking a look at individual users, taking a look at performance counters that are all gotten from the different layers of the environment. We have a dedicated sort of view for that that's going to give you a live updating view and understanding of performance of any one of those components in your environment. So this is our performance graph section. And here you can see we give visibility into your Citrix environment, Windows, different hypervisor platforms. You can see that we work very well with the most popular cloud platforms as well, Microsoft Azure, AWS, VMware, of course, Citrix Hypervisor. And here you can see live updating dashboards breaking down, showing you performance counters and metrics on any one of those different layers of your environment, whether that's the hypervisor host, your Windows environment, so on and so forth. So you not only get the ability to set up alerts to these, but you can set up dashboards that allows you to see real-time live updating data, so you can sort of be aware of issues as they're happening within the environment. So with that, I'll jump back over to the slide deck, because of course there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of information that presents within the technology, and we talked about how to use that, in real time to get to the bottom of issues as they're happening, based on the alerting, and based on, of course, being able to drill into a particular component and take a look at different metrics on, whether it's resource utilization or performance in general. A final piece is then to be able to document the information, document what's taking place, leveraging historical data so that you can put in place some permanent fix actions. So there are a number of different ways that a lot of our customers will leverage the data that is available in the technology. They can share the data, so taking running real-time reports based on the information that's being collected, whether that's via CSV, PDF. You can take screenshots of what's presenting in the technology. As we mentioned before, you can integrate these the data with certain third-party tools, or any third-party tools that are in your environment, whether that's for creating tickets, sending information to different tools for automation, things like that. And then finally, of course, you can enhance the data by leveraging either out-of-the-box reports or configurable visualization tools like Power BI or Tableau. So talking about some of the data that presents here, we can head over and talk. We pretty much have different categories of sort of reports that we have available in Goliath. We have the end user performance reports that break down the end user experience, logon duration, latency, those sort of metrics that are very focused on the users and what their performance is. We have different activity reports that really take a look at, especially during this remote workspace time period that we're in. These reports are going to take a look at productivity, understand how many users are accessing the environment at a particular time, peak usage, understanding productivity. Okay, so users are in the environment. How productive are they while they're in their VDI, or how productive are they while they're using their applications, license usage reports, so on and so forth. And as we mentioned before, because of the 5 layers of visibility, we have very, very good system performance reports that are going to break down, of course, utilization, host utilization, VM utilization, uptime and availability of those core systems that you have in your environment. I was just going to run through a couple of reports that might sort of help you get a little bit of an understanding as to what things are available and what the Goliath platform is capable of. So here's one that's going to break down host utilization. This is an out-of-the-box report that you can run on demand, or of course on a scheduled basis, maybe every week or every day, just to understand what the trends are, track them, and understand that those time periods, understand what time periods utilization is high, maybe you do need to maybe you're on an upward trend of resource utilization and you need to provide more hosts or maybe upgrade the hardware in order to support the users. Here's one that's focused on user experience. We have these for Citrix, VMware Horizon as well. And this is going to break down everything that goes into the user experience of a particular user. So whether their connection is fast, whether they had a poor or good logon time, their ICA latency as well, which is of course very important in the in understanding the overall usage or the overall performance while the user is inside of their session. We have a end user productivity report here that breaks down, as we mentioned before, the users. It breaks down their duration, the amount of time that they're spending within the environment, and it breaks down their interaction time. So this is the amount of time that they're sitting inside of their desktop, inside of their infrastructure, whether it's an application or so. This is the amount of time that they're actually creating traffic inside of that environment. So this allows you to understand, number one, if they're actually working, but then correlated with the end user experience report, you can understand if poor performance is actually impacting productivity. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Stacy, and then we can go into questions.
Great. Thank you, Yemi. We already had a couple questions come in, so if you do have any, please submit them in the Q&A box. One question we often do get is, well, how long would this take to get up and running? What we say is we can get you up and running in really less than 2 hours. We have a white glove service that will get you up and installed. Then you work with our technical consultants like Yemi and really leverage all of that embedded intelligence and automation with all the automatic alerts, all the automatic reports that are available, and really identify the ones that are critical to your use case and application. And then keep in mind, it's the embedded intelligence and automation that allows you to use this so seamlessly, which means that when you leverage Goliath, it is as if you've added 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts to your team. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into questions. Yemi, the first one comes from Andy, and he's asking, can you track which processes in a Windows server is consuming CPU? And can you track this over time, especially looking backwards to see if this is normal or not?
Sure, yeah, and the answer to that is yes. So we have the ability to monitor the different processes running in the environment. You know, of course, you know, we align those to the timeframes of sessions and things like that. So essentially, you have the ability to go back to, you know, historically and see a particular process and see, you know, what the utilization was at a particular point in time. A lot of our customers, however, will leverage our reporting and our alerting in order to track some of this information as well. Because of course, as you can imagine, processes are updating in a very, very quick fashion as far as resource utilization. So what our customers will do is they will set up thresholds for, you know, for any processes running in the environment, and then run reports on those thresholds or run reports based on the alerts on a scheduled basis. So maybe once a week or once a day if they really want to get to the bottom of things and get some granular data, right? So you could then go back, and if you start to see a bunch of spikes in CPU utilization or memory utilization for a particular process, you can go back and take a look at some of those other reports and see if that was a normal thing. How many times has this reached a certain threshold? And you can go back in time and see if that compares with, you know, what you've seen previously. That's how a lot of our customers leverage that. But as I mentioned before, there are a number of different ways that you could do that within the technology.
Great, thank you, Yemi. Next question comes from Rachel. Can you prove that an infrastructure problem like lack of CPU on a VM is causing poor performance for an end user?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that we do for a lot of our customers on a almost like on a daily basis, right? So I can jump back into the technology and show that. Let me just take a flip back over here. So where we are looking at now is our Citrix virtual apps and desktop session display, where you could isolate a specific user who's having an issue inside of their session. You could click down on a particular user here. So let's take this particular session, for example. And now you have everything that impacts this particular user aligned to the time frame of this session. And you can see all of that in one single view, right? You can see their logon, their performance with the inside of this session. But you can also see here the VDI, so the machine that's actually supporting the user, the hypervisor host, and the metrics for the hypervisor host that's supporting the user. So whether that is resource utilization, network performance, what data stores are attached, what other VMs are being supported by that host as well. So you can understand if this is a specific, if this is specifically a VM problem or a host problem. And then here you can see the different applications and processes that are running on that particular user session as well. And as we mentioned before, talking about Andy's question, all of this is going to be aligned to the time frame of this particular user session. So you can see if it's a resource problem in the VDI and the hypervisor host tab, but then get deeper into what was actually causing that resource problem here by looking at the processes. And then of course you have the alerts and logs section, which will show you any alerts that have triggered on this machine, right? So whether those are application errors, right? Whether those are things like group policy failures, things like that. And then you also have, of course, the event logs for the time frame of the session as well. So whether that is a non-persistent or persistent desktop, all of that data is stored historically in the technology. So you have the ability to get to the bottom of what was actually causing an issue, whether that's for a session that's taking place today or a session from a month ago or 2 months ago, depending on how long you would like to keep data for.
Great. Thank you, Yemi. And actually, Rachel had a follow-up as you were going ahead and showing all of that. Can you use some of that data to prove if poor session performance is due to the home ISP or something in the infrastructure?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that presents right on the summary tab as you click on that particular user session. So if we head back here, you can actually see on this summary tab, there's a lot of information here that is gotten pretty much from all of these tabs here for this particular user. So here you can see all of the components involved, the logons. But to answer the question, I think from Rachel, specifically, here you can see the performance of this user while they're within their session. You can see here the round trip time, which tells you if the user is or isn't having a problem. You can see if that problem is due to a network constraint. So you can see the network latency, or essentially the network performance for this particular user. And then here at the bottom of the screen, you can actually see their connection speed. And this is essentially their download speed from, at their particular location. So whether they are at their home office, whether they are within an office location, they're at a Starbucks, or whether they're maybe on a mobile hotspot somewhere, trying to access the environment. You can actually see the connection speed, how much connection they have or their download speed at that location. So you can start to make those correlations, right? So this user started off with about 100 megabits per second as far as the download speed, but you can see as their connection speed starts to drop, going back as low as 6 megabits per second, you can see the impact on the network latency and ultimately the impact on the user's performance. So this is exactly how customers are able to leverage the technology, showing how much of the problem is from a network perspective, and if it is from a network perspective, is it actually coming from internal or the user's location, the user's ISP, and that's when that connection speed metric is extremely valuable.
Perfect. All right. Next question is, how are you getting all this performance data?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we collect information through a number of different ways, right? And that's what really enables the sort of the different layers of visibility. The first way, of course, is we have API integration into the major platforms. So we're able to pull in the hypervisor host information without, of course, deploying any technology to those components. We also leverage a lightweight intelligent agent that is, it's about 1.5 meg in size. It doesn't require a reboot on installation. It takes up, I think, 0.1% of a CPU core, so it's really lightweight. And those are deployed on the virtual machines or physical machines in your environment. And this is how we pull in together all of those different components, from the event logs, from counter watches, down to the hypervisor host, and we align them to the time frame. Align them for the specific time frame of those components, so that you have everything at your fingertips when you're trying to troubleshoot.
Great. And we have a question from Sean. Does Goliath work for cloud, Amazon EC2, Azure, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of our customers that are that have hybrid infrastructure, maybe completely in the cloud, and our technology is pretty much sort of platform agnostic in that way. Anywhere that you have infrastructure, you can deploy our technology, and it will be able to. And we actually have specific rules that we set up for AWS and Azure as well. Looking for components or looking for issues within those components as well. So yeah, we have a number of different customers that are in a number of different cloud platforms, including Google Cloud as well.
Great. Razi then has a question around, do you also support Nutanix?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, we do. Now, we have the API integrations into Citrix Hypervisor, VMware, and we also support things like SNMP, syslog messages, and things like that. So a lot of our customers will actually leverage those technologies to collect information on the performance of that environment, pull them into the technology. And then even trigger remediation actions and things like that based on monitoring rules that they've set up for that information. So yes, we do have a number of customers that leverage Goliath in Nutanix environments as well.
Perfect. And unless any others come in, we have one more question, so please do submit if you have any more. This one asks, who typically manages the Goliath instance at your customers, and how much time do they spend on it?
Sure. Yeah. As far as managing the technology, the instance, it's typically it doesn't take it takes usually it's about whether it's a Citrix team, maybe it's an infrastructure team or something like that. But because of the embedded intelligence and automation, there really isn't much as far as managing the environment. We've typically, I think we say, or our customers say, it takes up 20 to 30% of time from a particular FTE. So there really isn't much because of much sort of management involved in this, because of the embedded intelligence and how much it comes with out of the box. And of course, on implementation, where we tailor the technology to suit your needs as an organization, so that moving forward, you're alerted to issues before they happen. You can leverage the technology for troubleshooting, and then of course, document issues, document the root cause of issues, and then you can put in some permanent fix actions to solve those. So very little management goes into this.
All right, and we did have one more come in from Jerry. Do you have to remediate actions automatically?
So do you have to remediate actions automatically? So no, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to. Leverage the remediation actions if you don't want to. We've had customers that every single alert has something called alert resolution notes, and we have customers that would put in some notes for, let's say, level 1 or level 2 to get started on remediation, right? So if you set up an alert and the alert triggers and it goes over to level 1, they have notes within the alert on how to troubleshoot those issues as well. So you have automatic remediation actions. You have the ability for the technology or the alerts to trigger scripts. But of course, if that's something, if there are issues that are taking place that are known, but you don't have scripts for, you don't want to leverage scripts, you can also leverage the alert resolution notes features and to get started on some of those remediation actions and limit escalations, or at least get most of the remediation done by the time it gets over to level 2 or level 3.
Great. Thanks, Yemi. That is the end of the questions, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining in today. As you can see on the screen, if you would like to see a customized demo for yourself, you have further questions about how this could work in your environment, or if you're looking to sign up for a free trial, please email techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com and we'll be happy to get back to you. Again, Yemi, thank you for this, and I hope everyone has a good and safe weekend coming up. Thank you.